this cliche that I think resonates so much the last couple of years, diving into this more of that I have to love myself so that I can now love you. Because if I don't love myself, I'm trying to figure out how to get you to love me. And I think that's that part where I got to figure this out versus if I'm okay as I am, then if you don't love me, that's a you issue. And I can be curious. Well, tell me why. Yeah, tell me, help me understand. But I'm not going to try to beg you to love me or to see me.
Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact. Hey everyone, welcome back. So today I have back with me my dear friend and colleague, a listener favorite, Tony Overbay. Tony is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified mindful habit coach, and he's the host of 2 award-winning mental health podcasts, The Virtual Couch and Waking Up to Narcissism, with over 12 million downloads across 150 countries and more. There's so much more about Tony and what he does and how he does it. So make sure you go over and check him out on Instagram, TikTok, and on his website, TonyOverbay.com. But today we are talking about this concept of differentiation. So at its core, differentiation is the ability to say, this is who I am, and to stay rooted in your identity, your beliefs, your emotions, even when others might pressure you to conform, might not like who you're saying that you are, what you're standing in, right? It's the opposite of codependency, really. It's about holding on to yourself while staying connected to others. In this episode, Tony and I dig really deeply into this concept of differentiation and how to navigate conflict, set boundaries, have authentic intimacy in the context of differentiation. So really incredible, amazing work that Tony is doing with this concept, and I'm very excited to share it with you. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Tony Overbay. Tony, I am so happy that you're back on my show. As always, I adore you.
The feeling is mutual, Kate, and I'm kind of giddy. I'm going to try to be very professional, very calm. Excited for whatever it is that we're going to talk about today in a very professional way.
They're just so funny. Why are you giddy?
Okay.
Are you just punchy today?
A little bit. I've already done lots of therapy. So I just came out of a session. So this is a much needed break. And who better to have that break than to talk to you about things like differentiation. And the thing I just shared with you before we started, there was a part of me that this is the first podcast interview I scheduled after that thing. So also I'm happy to be here.
Oh, good. All right. Do you want to tell the people what the thing is?
I have a giant scar in my neck, and it looks like I got in a cool fight or something, which I've never been in one in my life. But I had the ACDF surgery, which stands for, I had it memorized, anterior cervical discectomy and fusion. How cool is that? God. So I had a 3-level spinal fusion, and 4 months ago, I didn't have any problems. And I woke up in this crazy pain one day in my back and arm and neck, and it never went away. And I ignored it like a good person does for a couple of weeks. I even tried to work out through
like a real man, like a real man.
Yeah. That was very impressive with what I did. And then I finally went out and went to the doctor, and they sent me to get an MRI. And then, so this is kind of fun. Currently, I'm as a therapist, I probably have 5-6 doctor clients. So then I did say, I am sending you my MRI, and I want to take advantage of each and every one of you. And they were wonderful. And in 2AT, everyone said, oh, that's not so good.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. So then within a couple of months, I ended up having this spinal fusion surgery, and I woke up out of surgery with no pain. And it's just a trip to think in the span of these 3 or 4 months, I went from fine. I'm invincible, will live forever. And I was a 55-year-old still ultra marathon runner to then I wake up one morning and 3 months later I have spinal fusion and who knows what the future will look like, but I'm excited about it.
You seem like you're feeling okay now. Like no
I feel
pain.
good.
You're good. You've got this. You look like a badass. Like someone slit your throat and you
I
live.
know it does look kind of cool, right? I got to come up with a better story. Okay, well, the funny thing is, yeah, everything went great, and I know that that's not always everyone's circumstance. But there was one thing that I have to admit, and that was everything I read about it. I couldn't get enough information about it, but they said that your throat's going to be sore for 2 or 3 weeks. So I think they have to move your esophagus over while they're digging in there to fix you.
Oh yeah.
And so then I read and saw that you'd most likely lose 10, 12 pounds. So what I did was I went ahead and put those on in anticipation of, and then it turns out my throat wasn't so sore. So now I've got some weight to lose.
So now you have to lose your 10 or 12 pounds
Thank you.
with like effort as
Yeah,
opposed to just not eating because your
exactly.
throat's sore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
bummer.
But no, but I feel great and I'm just excited to be here with you.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm happy you're okay.
Thank you.
I'm feeling a little punchy today too. So
Good.
yep, there we go. I want to talk to you about differentiation. And this is something that you started to talk to us about when you came on as a special guest
Yeah.
in Phoenix Rising, my group coaching program. And you came on as one of our special guests, and we started talking about this concept of differentiation. And I was like, we need to do an
Yeah.
episode all about that. What is as a concept?
Yeah.
What is
Okay.
differentiation?
Well, and I love this so much. And by the way, that was, and I'm not just saying this to drive people to anything that you do, but you put out amazing content, and that was so fun to be the expert there. And you had an
Mhm.
amazing group of women, and the questions asked were phenomenal. And I just really enjoyed that. I really liked everything about that, the questions,
You're
and
great.
but we got into the whole concept of differentiation, and I promise I'll make this very quick, but there's a little backstory I think is fascinating with this.
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
that as a 15 years as a couples therapist, my modality of choice there is emotionally focused couples therapy, EFT, based off
Mhm.
the work of Sue Johnson. It's a lot around attachment issues. So one of my favorite guests that I have on my podcast is a lady named Jennifer Finlayson Fife, and she's a differentiation therapist. So I had her
Mhm.
on at one point, and I just said, let me tell you a little bit about my 4 pillars of a connected conversation, which are based on EFT. I think it's this amazing framework to have conversations. And then I said, what do you know about EFT? And she just said that she felt like the locus of control. She didn't like where the locus of control was. And what she meant by that was in my couples therapy, emotionally focused therapy, at some point, what you're doing is you're making an emotional bid. You're handing your heart over to your partner and you're saying, can I care? Do you care about me? Can I count on you? Do you have my back? Do you love me? And as you and I know, in these emotionally immature narcissistic relationships, you're basically saying, hey, here are some buttons that you can press whenever you get really upset with me. And then I will feel really bad about the fact that I even
That's
shared this with you. Right.
that is why we don't go to therapy with our
I
abusers.
know, and it's so tough. So then I really felt like she really did get it. I mean, the locus of control. There are situations where you say, all right, the goal is to be heard. To be heard is to be healed. And my couple is my couples model. But then sometimes the person puts out that emotional bid and the other person doesn't play fair with that. And so then I start looking at differentiation. I'd heard so much about it. I embarrassingly even did an episode on it years ago where I just went and read an article on Psychology Today. I thought I really had the idea down,
Mhm.
but that started me. It was a little over 2 years ago on this journey into differentiation. And now it is a core part of my couples therapy, of my individual work. Because what differentiation talks about is this, and the work that I primarily look at is by a guy named David Schnarch. And
Mhm.
then before him was a guy named Bowen. And so Bowen, Schnarch, Jennifer Finlayson Fife, there's some really people that are doing some amazing work with this concept. But so I'm going to quote David Schnarch here, where he says, differentiation is people's ability to balance humankind's 2 most fundamental drives, our desire for attachment and connection on one hand, and our desire to be an individual and direct the course of our own lives on the other. And then that later refers to the ability to hold on to yourself when important people in your life pressure you to conform. And what's so fascinating about this is I think that we all, for the most part, get in relationships, especially young, and we are codependent and enmeshed. I'll use my
Mhm.
hands
Mhm.
here,
Yep.
and it's because we just so desperately want to be in love and in a relationship that then even when somebody says something that we don't necessarily agree with, we just think, that's not a big deal, or I bet you I'll warm up to that idea. And so if somebody says, hey, do you like sports? And the other person doesn't, but they like that person and they're afraid if I say I don't like sports, that person will leave. They're like, I
Mhm.
love sports, you know, and then,
Yeah, it's
right.
great.
And
Uh-huh.
then they're like, oh,
Uh-huh.
who's your favorite team? Well, who's your favorite team? Because, and you're just playing this
Uh-huh.
game. And it's funny too, Kate, because knowing that we were going to talk about this today, I've had two sessions already today where people were talking about some of their origin stories as a couple and talking about how they agreed on everything. Everything was so easy. And that sounds great. But in reality, I think that is that codependent and that enmeshment. And
Mhm.
so a lot of
Mhm.
times the relationships are easy until then you start moving forward in the relationship and you stumble upon things like financial issues, kids, jobs, family issues. And now all of a sudden, oh, I do have a different opinion than this person, but then I don't know how to express it. And when I do, then that person's like, I can't believe you think that, or I thought you told me this other thing. So there, we're trying to become autonomous. We're trying differentiation is where one person ends and the other begins. But in the
Mhm.
middle is so much invalidation that then all it takes is somebody that cares, that we think cares about us or we care about, to say, I didn't know you felt that way. And then all of a sudden we're back into enmeshment. Well, actually, maybe I just spoke too soon, or maybe that isn't as big a deal to me. So I'm not standing in my own sense of self. I'm not becoming more autonomous, and I'm folding back into the relationship, into this familiar role, just to maybe make the other person feel better. So that's where I love that. It's like we're supposed to get into relationships to be able to figure out who we are, because I need to interact with another human in order to learn who I am. When they say that, right, then I feel this way. So differentiation ultimately becomes everything really is a me thing. Why do I need that person to understand? Or why do I need them to calm down? Or why do I need them to react a certain way? Because it will make me feel better or will make me feel in control. Those are me issues.
Right, right. God, it's so interesting. I think that I'll just share from my own experience, right? Having been raised in complete enmeshment,
Yeah.
right? My mother was just, swallowed me whole. I had no differentiation
Mm.
growing up. And I tried. I mean, I tried so hard. It was like I was fighting for it with
Yeah.
every breath. My godfather once took me out to dinner and he said, I feel like you're fighting so hard for like to get her off of you
Yeah.
that you've got nothing left for yourself to like
Wow.
grow. And I was like, but I can't, what I know now is that I was fighting for the ability to grow, but she was
Yeah.
just right because of her narcissism. And she
Yeah.
did not ever see me as an individual. She only
No,
saw me as an extension of herself. Right.
absolutely.
And so the differentiation work I had to do in order to grow away from my mother was so fucking intense.
Yeah.
But then as I, got older and I was getting into relationships, I was so in that emotionally fused, codependent. Like I was so good at that.
Yeah.
I was so good at I'll be whatever you want me to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm a chameleon. No, you just don't have a sense of self.
And not knowing that too, right, Kate? I mean, I felt that same way of just that I felt like I was just pretty agreeable. I didn't have strong opinions about things, not realizing that that was because I wasn't there. There was no curiosity toward me, maybe growing up. Didn't feel seen. I just had to figure out what is it that I need to do or say so that this person will like me or so that they will not abandon me. And so
That's
then it's like,
right.
I will, yeah, you nailed it. I'll be whoever you need me to be. So you can be you and I'll be the rest. I'll do whatever it takes to stay in this relationship. Yeah.
Yes. And then you just lose yourself more and more and more and more. So Snarch also, he goes on to say, right, differentiation yields emotional autonomy,
Yeah.
the basis for healthy interdependence and the foundation for intimacy and stability in long-term relationships. Let's talk about interdependence because I think,
Okay.
we always talk about codependence and
Yeah.
right. But interdependence is really that's the healthy model, which is that balance, right,
Yeah.
between our desire for connection and also autonomy.
And I think it's interesting because I will find people will often say, well, then why be in a relationship if I'm trying to be myself? And I think that's maybe the false message that is spread out there that we're two halves that make a whole. But in
Mhm.
reality, we need to become two whole, complete people, because at that point, then, and there's a lot of concepts and differentiation around choosing. Like I am choosing myself, and so that I can choose you. Or this cliche that I think resonates so much the last couple of years, diving into this more, of that I have to love myself so that I can now love you. Because if I don't love myself, I'm trying to figure out how to get you to love me. And I think that's that part where I got to figure this out versus if I'm okay as I am, then if you don't love me, that's a you issue. And I can be curious. Well, tell me why. Yeah, tell me, help me understand. But I'm not going to try to beg you to love me or to see me. And I think that's one of the most difficult things that we see in these narcissistic relationships is we will do anything to try to give that person again this aha moment or the epiphany or try to get them to understand. But then in that moment, that person, the narcissist, just sees my neediness or my putting myself out there as almost like weakness. But then they can take whatever it is that I'm giving them and they'll file it away and use it later. If I've had a couple recently where the wife just, in the session, she just said, my biggest fear is that my kids are going to think that I'm not an engaged mom and that I don't care about them because she was working a whole lot. And then 2 weeks later, they come back in and there had been a fight. And what did he go to immediately? He had never said this in his life, but then he said, and I'm going to tell the kids that you don't even care. Like you aren't even an engaged mom. And that's the part that just breaks my heart. So it's like I'm putting myself out there and then that person's going to take that and use it against me. So then the person in her position without this concept of differentiation needs to at some point learn that, okay, that is a me thing. I don't want the kids to feel this way. So then what can I do to make sure that they don't feel this way? Because I can't count on my partner having my back. As a matter of fact, I just watched now that the very thing that I gave him from a place of vulnerability, now he weaponizes and uses against me. Yeah. And this is the part where,
Yes.
in those interactions, and I think this is where we were going in your training, was that sometimes people don't feel like they can get out of a relationship. And I think we were saying that I know the work that we do, I would love to tell people what to do, or, this is what I see is going to happen. But then you're dealing with real individuals who are stuck. And sometimes they feel stuck because of finances, family pressures. And so then if they don't feel like they have options, becoming more differentiated within a relationship can be something to keep an eye on. So if this person's telling me they think this is who I am, ultimately I am the one that gets to be the judge of that. And so I get to decide if that is who I really think I am. Maybe I can give more concrete examples or
Yeah.
okay.
Do.
Okay. So let's go down, and I'd given you this handout that I think is so phenomenal. And
Great.
but Schnarch talks about these 4 points of balance of differentiation. And those to me, it seemed like each one of those became a 3 or 4 month just journey in understanding each one of these, because they become really important to get to what we'll talk about toward the end today. But the first one is, he says, you have to develop a solid but flexible sense of self, which means you need to know who you are without needing others to tell you. And you can self-confront to become a better person. And I think I might have debuted this in your group, Kate, where I don't know if I said that there, but I even want to put a math formula on it. And I want to look at this like I want to help a client have a 90% solid, 10% flexible sense of self. So what if 90% of the time I feel good about myself? I'm leaving 10% open so I can take anyone's feedback, criticism, because I want to be the very best me. But what if 90% of the time I'm going to respond back with, thank you, I appreciate that, period. And not, because I feel like if I have a 40% solid, 60% flexible sense of self, then I'm back to this. Okay, just tell me, like, what do you think I'm doing? Okay, I'll work on that. Or what do you think I need to do better? And so many of us, I think, are still stuck in this mode of, I want to know what other people think about me so that I can become better, which is okay. But we have to operate from a place of, but what if I start from a place of, I'm okay, I'm good.
I often talk to very sort of basic, sort of pedantic version of this is that I often talk to my clients about, like, when your abuser is trying to, like, kind of tell you who you are, kind of thing, or saying like, well, you're this kind of person or you're that, and you're not. It's as if they're saying that you have green hair.
Yeah.
And if you don't have green hair, your response is, I don't know what is going on with you,
Exactly.
but, like, I know that this is not true for me.
Yes.
Right. And I like
Yes.
the idea that we have 90% of it, that much sense of self, that I know who I am.
I'm good. Yeah.
That when you say something to me and you, like, ascribe something to me that I know is not true, that I can go, thanks for sharing, but no.
Yeah.
And 10% flexibility to be like, oh shit, you know what? I hadn't really thought about that.
Exactly. And I love that.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
I'm going to
I
take a look at
want to
that.
be. Yes, and
Hmm.
that's and I want to be the best version of myself. On that first point of balance too, I got to share this. This is
Yes.
funny to me. I'm not a huge fan of the love languages. I make the joke that most therapists aren't, but they're used constantly, and it's because they're not an evidence-based set of tools. Now, if they're used as a muse, then I think they can be great. But then people take them and they weaponize them.
Yes.
And what Schnarr says at one part in that first point of balance is he says that you need to learn how to self-validate rather than rely on external validation to feel good. And right out of the gate, he says external validation includes things such as words of affirmation, physical touch, having things done for you, requiring things to change before you're willing to change. But I will tell you, most, and I'm gonna do a little bit of close to all or nothing, including myself. Most of the guys I work with identify their love languages as words of affirmation and physical touch. And
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
I even did a whole episode on this at one point that I thought I was so clever. And then a lot of the women in the relationship were maybe acts of service and quality time. And so then the guy will eventually then go over and say, okay, I will spend more time with you and I will do things for you. So can you now come tell me how awesome I am and want to
So
have sex with
now
me?
give me sex.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Right.
But then
Right.
what this made so much sense is that so when a guy doesn't feel good about himself in this scenario, then he's saying, I don't feel very good and I'm not probably being my best self. What would make me feel better is if you tell me how awesome I am right now, even though I'm not being very cool, and if you desire me, even though I'm absolutely not being desirable. If you do those things, I'll feel better. So what did I just do? I made you in charge of my well-being, my emotional well-being. And then if heaven forbid, then she eventually feels pressured to do so. Now I feel great. So now why don't you even do that more? Because now I am so awesome and desirable. So it puts the woman often in this position of what we learn duty sex, pity sex. Okay, I'll do this so that then he will
Yeah.
stop being such a jerk. You
Or
ever seen that
yeah.
case?
So oh, have I ever seen it? Yes. It's called sexual abuse, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. It's
Yeah.
coercion. It's sexual
Coercion.
coercion.
Yeah.
And it's emotional manipulation, for the sake of a blowjob. Like, I hope you enjoyed that blowjob, but like, really, you got it under duress?
Yeah.
Does that make you feel good about yourself? Probably. They're like, well, I don't care. Whatever. I got it. Oh my God. All right. Well, I want to take a quick break. And then I want to continue on with the 4 points of balance. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. So, guys, we all know divorce is hard. Co-parenting, even harder. That's why most of my clients use our Family Wizard, the #1 most referred co-parenting app out there. Our Family Wizard eliminates misunderstandings with a secure, uneditable messaging system, which is the best way to document communication for court. If you need to share schedules, expenses, or important updates, it's all in one place. No more he said, she said. Plus, with features like tone meter and detailed activity logs, it helps keep communication civil and accountable. When people know their messages are permanently recorded and reviewable, they tend to stay more in line. Courts, attorneys, and therapists recommend it because it works, helping co-parents stay organized and reduce conflict. So, ready for smoother co-parenting? Go to kateanthony.com/OFW today and take control of your communication. That's kateanthony.com/OFW. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure about your next step in the divorce process? You don't have to do this alone, my love. If you're listening to this podcast, you already know that I am a pioneer in the divorce coaching industry, and that for over a decade, I've helped hundreds of women navigate some of the toughest decisions of their lives. Until recently, I only worked with clients in a long-term private capacity. But I know that not everyone needs or has the ability to commit to long-term coaching. Sometimes you just need clear, focused strategies to move forward. That's why I now offer targeted 3-session strategy packages designed to give you the clarity, direction, and confidence you need without the long-term commitment. Whether you're deciding whether to stay or go, uncovering and healing from abuse, or dealing with a high-conflict divorce, I will help you create a clear roadmap, develop a plan to work with your attorney, saving you time and money, and help you navigate difficult conversations with ease. All coaching is done on Zoom, so no matter where you are, we can work together. No consultation call is needed. Just fill out a quick questionnaire and I'll get you all set up. Head on over to kateanthony.com/strategy and take the first step toward a stronger, more empowered future today. That's kateanthony.com/strategy. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay, we're back. So before the break, we were talking about blowjobs,
I
but
was gonna say
um,
that was the
this is what happens when Tony and I get together.
hey.
We go anywhere. We were talking about the relying on external validation to
Yeah,
feel good and creating that like 90-10, like that real solid sense of self
yeah,
with flexibility. Because like, look, if I spend my life in a relationship being like, I don't know, it's fine by me, it sounds like a you problem, then you're not actually able to be in a relationship. There's no flexibility.
no, and Kate, I'm glad you said that because I have found and my kids, they're all adults. My wife, they've told me that when I started bringing this differentiation concept at home, that it sounded like I was being kind of a jerk because it's hard to not, you still want to go in and manage the other person's emotions or you want to manage their anxiety. And at the core of differentiation too is that we're so used to, in let's say a family system, that if somebody is angry and then they diffuse that anger into the family system, who will pick it up? And I even think about this where I've been in meetings before back when I was in the corporate America days, and somebody would say, we need somebody to do this thing. And then it's the tension in the silence is that then who is the one that can't deal with that? So then they say, I'll do it. So it literally is like, what do we do with our discomfort? And so often I see amazing, wonderful parents who have meaning well enabled their kids that then when their kid just really gets upset or angry or doesn't know how to do something, the parent now knows what to do with that anxiety. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. I just want you to be able to do things that but then the kid now just got out of their discomfort. The parent then took care of whatever it was. And I'm not saying, I mean, I do this to a fault in my own life, but then it creates it's a bit enabling. It can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. My ex-husband he had that in his life where he felt like anytime he had any frustration with something, his dad would be like, "Oh, stop it. I'll just do it." Right. But his
Yes.
dad did it in anger. And
Yes.
so he always felt like he could never do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Instead of allowing him to suffer through and like suffer through the frustration, his dad would come in and sort of do it for him, but also make him feel
Bad.
stupid,
Yes.
you know?
And that's where it's like if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, then I need
Mhm.
to do it and not say, okay, I guess, because that's me also wanting validation for this
Mm,
thing I'm going to do. And
yeah.
so often people will do things because they want validation. And it's interesting when you look at that validation bucket, that gets pretty wild to look at all the different things that you would never think fall in the bucket of validation.
Hmm.
But really sometimes I'll have people to say, but I just need to go tell them, I need them to understand that this isn't okay. But then if they're not curious, most likely they're not going to understand. And that's what I'm going to give them an attack surface for them to then tell me how wrong I am. But ultimately, I need to know or I need to understand this thing isn't okay.
That's what I say all the time. I'm like,
Yeah,
if you are just everything in you is like, but he needs to understand, chances are the person who needs to understand is you.
absolutely. And that's so good. That is. And
Right?
that,
Because it's he already knows, right? He
mm,
already knows, or if he doesn't know, he doesn't care.
yeah,
So what are you going to do if you don't know it, right? If you actually had to sit in the discomfort of
yes,
like actually absorbing what that means for yourself, what different decisions might you make?
absolutely. And I love that because, and I typically I want to start from this place of we have to embrace that this growth comes from discomfort. In my couples work, I'll often say we're so afraid of contention that we avoid tension altogether. That's where some real growth
Hmm.
occurs. And then as an
Yeah.
individual, we're so afraid of, of just like feeling bad. We want certainty. Our brain craves certainty. And then if we don't feel certain, then we're uncomfortable. So then we got to get rid of the discomfort right now. And how do we do that? We either diffuse it into a relationship or we caretake somebody else or just to make ourselves feel better. But when you can learn to just build in that pause, notice the feelings, yeah, that discomfort can really be a guide. And I'm saying it like I'm
Hmm.
some pro. I mean, I've been a therapist 20 years and I'm barely figuring out the growth through the discomfort thing, I think. So that's what's been fun about this. Okay, I want to make sure the second part. So we got that solid, flexible sense of self. The second one is one that I overlooked for quite a while, and I just jumped to the third. But the second point of balance is having a quiet mind or a calm heart, which is the ability to self-regulate and self-soothe your anxiety without expecting somebody else to do that for you. And so this is where I think it is so important that when you start to really show up in a relationship as yourself, try to be more autonomous. People are used to us filling roles. Our we like these patterns. We like familial patterns, and we typically play a role in a family system. This is
Mhm.
where we could even, maybe we should do another one on my podcast. We'll talk about narcissistic family systems, because that's all the roles that are played there. So when somebody
Yes.
starts to work on differentiation, it isn't like everybody applauds and sends them presents. It's people try to figure out a way to get them back into that place where they're at. So when
Yeah.
people start to show up differently, then the people in the narcissist in their lives will push new buttons, and it can even be pretty bad ones. Like, I don't even know if I want to be around anymore, or, and all of a sudden they're trying to put that on you, whatever it
Yes.
takes
Oh,
to get you
oh,
back right into that
uh-huh.
role you
Yes. All
played.
the so common.
Right. And so those are scary ones. So then this one
Yeah.
of where I got to learn to quiet my own mind and calm my own heart, self-regulate and self-soothe, because what the narcissistic person's trying to do is get get your amygdala hijacked, get your heart rate to elevate, get you to lose access to your good old prefrontal cortex so that you will jump back in and to fight or flight mode, and just, okay, fine, I'll do it, and then,
Right.
yeah. And
That's right.
that part breaks my heart. So that's where we're going to need to do some things like good old mindfulness, meditation. But I've got a person I'm working with now that's doing some amazing work with somatic healing, and they were
Mhm.
talking about even this version of self-regulate, self-soothe is like, it might be going to like a rage room and breaking a bunch of stuff, or it might
Love
be,
it. That's
yeah.
right.
Have you done
That's
it? Have you
right.
done that yet, Kate? Have you
I
done
have
anything like
not, but
that?
I recommend it to clients
Oh,
all
me
the
too.
time.
I
I'm
want to
like,
do it
find
so
a rage
bad.
room. And they're like, a what? I'm like, it's a room where they give you a hammer and you just break shit. And they're like, oh.
I got it. I want to do that. I do. So whatever you have to do, because I think that gets you to the third point of balance, which is grounded response. And again, each one of these is so important because
Mhm.
that means managing your reactivity. And I think typically, we think of, okay, so I need to learn to not overreact. But I think even the bigger part of that, though, is also I need to not play small. And I think that's what happens so often. Yeah. And do you see that with a lot
100%.
of the people you work with?
Oh, absolutely, right? Because well, this is
Mhm.
this is the walking on eggshells, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, I can't express myself because there's no emotional safety for it. There's no container in this relationship for me to say
Hmm.
what it is that I need, and so I've got to like, it's okay, I'm fine, right?
Yeah.
We are sort of under, we're over functioning
Yeah.
and like, under reporting
Yeah.
our feelings because it's just not safe or there's just no space in the relationship for us to do so.
Well, okay, and again, I'm glad you put it that way, because I do want to say to anybody that's in a narcissistic relationship that I do think this concept of differentiation, it is a long game, and we'll talk
Mhm.
about that more too.
Mm,
But if you aren't safe, I do think a lot of this, even the differentiation principles, are done internally. So even not playing small might be, instead of wasting emotional calories thinking what's wrong with me, beating myself up, it might be, okay, I am not the person that they are saying I am. I am calming myself down, and in my inside voice, I'm saying, okay, that this isn't okay.
that's
And
right.
that's because I do know that in some relationships, if somebody tries to jump right to differentiation, their partner knows all the right buttons to push to get them to get to that amygdala hijack state.
Yeah, this is not something that you're doing in order to change the
Good
relationship,
point. Yeah.
right? This is something you're doing for
It's a you
yourself.
thing.
It's a
Yeah.
you thing, which is right why we're talking about differentiation,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
it really is, it's an internal thing, and you might say to your partner if you're still in the relationship, listen, I'm really working on not having, inappropriate reactions. I'm working on having right-sized reactions to what's going on. So, right, if you sense that I'm a
Yeah.
little distant, that's what's going on. I'm working on my own thing, right? But this is one of the reasons that I remember, if I've ever told you this, but our couples therapists, when David and I were still married, our couples therapist said that they didn't want their clients to be in individual therapy because
Mhm.
individual therapy kills marriages.
Wow. Oh, that is fascinating. No, I did
And
not
I
know
was
that.
like, I was like, and at the time I was like, huh, but was in individual therapy because I knew I needed it.
Yeah.
And, later on and reflecting back on that, I was like, or individual therapy shores you up in such a way that it builds up your sense of self and differentiation
Yes.
so that you're able to identify when things are not working for you, right? If
Yes.
I don't have a full sense of
Absolutely.
capital S self,
Yeah.
when something comes at me that doesn't feel right, I don't understand it and it will attach to me. But if
Yeah.
I have a solid sense of self with this flexibility, when something comes at me that doesn't feel right, I'm able to go, oh, that doesn't feel right. I don't have
Yeah.
to be reactive to it.
That's so key, Kate. And it's interesting. I will stand in my healthy ego here and say that as a longtime couples therapist now, I have heard often of people that said that their previous couples therapist didn't like when they would bring tools from individual therapy into the couple setting. And I thought, man, what an insecure couples therapist that is,
That's
because
right.
the more tools, the merrier. Let's figure this thing out. There
That's
isn't
right.
this one size fits all. And what you just said too leads right to the okay. So if I'm working on myself, then this fourth point of balance, meaningful endurance, which is increasing your tolerance of pain for growth. Really, it's a fancy way to say embracing that growth comes from discomfort. But there's two key points in this fourth point of balance from Schnarch. One is that then I'm going to own my own stuff rather than projecting my issues on others. So that's where, okay, every now and again, what the clock strikes is right twice a day. The narcissistic person might have a point.
Uh-huh.
So then I'll say, okay, that's fair. And I will own that. And then, but then so that's like, I'm going to take ownership of my own stuff. But then this is a small line. And I think it really speaks volumes with the population we work with, and then taking responsibility to change. And the reason I like that, bringing awareness to that, is I think maybe we will see sometimes not the most grandiose of narcissists, maybe a vulnerable narcissist or someone that will learn the right things to say at times to get out of the discomfort. So they
Uh-huh.
may say, no, you're right. You know what? I do need to do a better job of that. And it feels great. It feels nice to hear that. But then what do they do when they wake up the next day? Feels like they're taking ownership of what they need to. But then that next day, what do they do to take responsibility to change? And sometimes it just takes a little bit more of like, well, tell me more about what you're sorry about. And then you're going to hear, well, I said, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm all the things, right? Yeah. But tell me more.
Hmm.
But then I just think so often, and I'll throw a real quick side note too. I work with plenty of people that struggle with turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms up to full blown addiction, and this is where every addict's last time they're going to do this is the last time I'm going to act out. And I believe a lot of times in that moment they do believe
Oh,
it,
100%. Right.
right? But then it feels so good that then the next day they wake up that then they're like, no, I'm serious this time. But then what are you doing? What efforts are you making toward change? So that's where, with differentiation being a me thing, is part of that being the best version of myself, is that when I do find things that I can take ownership of, then now what am I going to do about those? Because it
Uh-huh.
will feel good to take ownership, but then we'll just revert back to the same patterns over time. How long is our shelf life, basically?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Like if you're really, especially like for an addict, if you are really willing and ready to face
Yeah.
the level of addiction, then like the first thing you do is you're going to go to rehab, you're going to go to a meeting,
Yeah.
you're going to get help, not be like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm going to have to, you're right. I should really look at that. No, no,
Exactly.
no.
Like, no, this time I get it. You're right. And I remember there's a version of this that I never, I now know that it is what somebody does to get out of their discomfort. And I can think of so many clients where you think you have this amazing session, and at the end they're like, no, you know what? You're right. I just need to I just need to write some things down. And this week I'm going to take action. I'm like, okay, that feels good. This guy's got it. And then they come back the next week. Well, I didn't really get to any of this stuff because I had a lot of stuff going on. But now that I'm here, I'm realizing I got to get serious about this. I'm like, you're darn right. You do. Boy, that feels good. And then how many weeks do they do that? And it's just kicking the can down the road. So at some point you actually have to do things.
That's right. And how often do we see that in relationships, right?
Oh yeah. Okay, so
Yes.
I want to say the couple of things that then, so those 4 points of balance, I just feel like that is such a wonderful thing to work on. But then
Hmm.
where I think it can really become important is, let's say you do that enough that you do feel like you have a pretty good idea of who you are. And then
Yeah.
that's where it starts to be like, I can calm myself down. I'm not going to play small. And what that can look like is, Schnarch talks about two things I think are really interesting. One is he talks about this concept of gridlock. And that's where there are times where then you and your partner both get to this point where you just aren't making any progress. You finally
Hmm.
feel like you have the courage to express some things that you would like different in the relationship. And let's take counseling for one. So let's say that one partner is saying, I really think now we need to start going to counseling. And the other one says, I don't think it'll help. So in the past, if I didn't have a solid sense of self, then I might say, geez, okay, I don't know what else to do. But the more I know that is the right thing to do. So we're in gridlock now. And Schnarch talks about this concept of constructing your crucible, which I never understood. And now it is the most brilliant concept, where he says,
Mm-hmm.
now you're going to take your extract your unresolved personal issues that are in that gridlock situation, and you're going to confront them as an act of integrity. And this is where So my 5 rules of narcissism have always been this: raise your baseline, your emotional baseline,
Mm-hmm.
self-care, get your PhD in gaslighting, get out of unproductive conversations, learn to set healthy boundaries and know the difference between a boundary and ultimatum. But I would always say that the fifth one, you're never going to give this person the aha moment or the epiphany. But then some clients would get to such a good place where they felt like, if I'm leaving the relationship, I just feel like I just want to say something. And I would always say, are you still trying to give them the aha moment or the epiphany? And
Uh-huh.
then this concept of differentiation came around. And so I now look at these 5 suggestions I have of almost like part of this becoming more differentiated, solid sense of self. And so now the person is going to say, they are going to express things because it's the right thing for them to do. And if they don't express them, they feel like they are betraying themselves. But the biggest key is it's outcome independent, that it's not doing it for the relationship, you're doing it for yourself. So I go back to this example of, if you can die on the hill of, that counseling would be necessary for me and for my relationship, but your partner keeps saying, I don't think so. You can keep going back to that. That's your crucible. So I'm taking my unresolved personal issue, I'm confronting it as an act of integrity, because they could say all kinds of things like, well, I don't think it will help, or we don't have the money, or we don't have the time, or will you go by yourself? All of those start to become ways you now know they're getting out of their discomfort and I'm becoming stronger, and that I know that this is what I need to make me show up the very best version of myself. And so that's where I love that you need those 4 points of balance to just be part of who you are. It isn't, I'm working on them. It's like, this is the I am. I know who I am. I am calm. I am grounded. I don't play small. I'm willing to take ownership of the things I do need to take ownership of, and I will take action. And I do that, rinse and repeat for a while. And then a couple of things happen. One, and these are things I never would have imagined that would be, until I felt like I got to this place. So now if somebody does push a button and it gets to me, it really is a fascinating concept, because I'm good. So all of a sudden it's like, ooh, why did that get me? So now
Mm-hmm.
there's the work that I get to do,
Yes, that's
right?
right.
And then
Mm-hmm.
the even better part is, now this part of constructing your crucible, as I found in therapy and in my life, there's far more times now where I'm able to I don't know, confront something as an act of integrity, to bring something up in a session or with a person, because it's outcome independent, because I'm saying it because it's the right thing to say. And that does, Schnarch says it will pressure the relationship for growth. But the growth, I think I always assumed, meant that the relationship would get better. But the growth is that I will start to feel better about myself in a relationship, any relationship. And so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel like that's the part where I'm still not saying, hey, everybody, go do this with your narcissistic partner. But I think that the steps of becoming differentiated, even getting to this point of constructing your crucible, can really be empowering, because you know that you're okay. And these are the things that I think and want and feel. And
Mm-hmm.
if I do get to the point where I feel like I can express them, then I'm going to feel good about the fact that I expressed them, even if my partner isn't curious or doesn't want to join me in this process. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I will feel good that I put that out there. But this is where I want your expertise, Kate, because I don't want to put somebody in a position where their narcissistic person will then, I don't know, that could use it against them.
Well, I was gonna ask you about this because it's like when it sure it's outcome. So the example that you gave, right, about like we need to go to couples therapy, right? And when your partner says like, "No, I'm good. We don't need that." But if that is your crucible, if you're like,
Yeah.
in order for me to be in integrity in this relationship,
Yeah.
we have to do the couples work. It doesn't feel outcome independent
Yeah. You're right.
because you do need the other person to do something,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
if they're not going to do that, I guess it's like, is
That's it.
what's your bottom line? Is that
That's
your
it.
bottom line, your deal
Yeah.
breaker, where you're
Yeah.
like, well, I don't know what to tell you because if we don't do therapy, I can't actually
I
go any
can't keep doing
further,
this. Yes,
right?
and you're so spot on, Kate. I'm glad you talked that one through, because then it has to come in our good old friend boundaries, and it can't be you need to understand that this is, important. It's if you don't do this, then I am going to leave.
There's
And
a
what's
consequence.
right,
Yeah.
there's a consequence. And what's
Yeah.
unfortunate, or I don't know, I won't put a label on that, but you often see with the extremely immature narcissistic person that then, when one finally does start to act on their boundary, then the person, oh,
Oh,
okay.
wait, no, I want to go to therapy. I want to go to
Yeah.
therapy. I want to go to therapy. Interesting. Oh, this is what my ex, I always talk about this, poor God love him. But, 2 or 3 weeks after I finally said, like, I am done, he came to me and he said, Kate, I'm just so sorry. I never thought you'd leave. And I was like, huh.
Oh, yes.
you knew it was bad.
Yeah.
You knew that you were treating me poorly. You just didn't think you ever had to stop because you actually never thought I would
Right.
do this work of differentiation and shoring up my sense of self to be able to say, if this doesn't change, I'm leaving, and actually
Actually
follow through.
do
Like
it.
you never thought I was going to do that. And look, for good reason, because for 10 years I had not,
I know.
right?
Right.
But man, how honest was that? He's like, I'm so sorry. I just never thought you'd leave. Like how transparent, right?
Well, it's so funny because that's the stuff that I don't know whether to say, oh, good for the transparency, or it's the part where the person doesn't even understand like
What he
how
just said.
yes, exactly. Like
Don't know.
okay, now I have to just fun war stories here. I had one recently where I was explaining triangulation and I was saying to the guy, I said, okay, but I went and asked all my family and they also agree that their wife is something. And I said, oh, that's triangulation, that's manipulation, that this sort of thing. He's like, oh yeah, no, totally. I was like, oh no, I think you missed the point though. That's bad,
That's bad.
right?
Right. That's
Yeah.
not a good
It's not a
thing.
good thing. No, I'm not praising you that you were very good at triangulating. I was saying that was a bad, I guess so to a narcissistic person, they're saying, hey, I'm like really good at this. The therapist said I was one of the best triangulators he's ever seen. Right.
Exactly. Woohoo, gold star for
Right.
triangulation.
Oh, gosh. So, okay. So but the differentiation thing is so fascinating because at that point, you're right. It's funny because what Schnarch will also say is and at first I took a little bit of exception to this, but he said, it was something to the effect of, if you think you're more differentiated than your partner, but you're still in the relationship, then you're kind of not. And what I think is really interesting is if
Right.
I'm watching one person trying to help them and the person won't come to couples therapy. And so I'm working with the individual and they are, raising the water of the relationship is the theory that then it will give a chance for this other person to show up different. I'm still struggling right now. Maybe I'll come back on in a year and I'll say, oh, okay, here's what I was missing. And I think the answer lies in that if you get yourself to this point where you now realize the things that you want in a relationship and it's okay. I skipped the whole part of this. I should even back up and say, so at some point, once you're differentiated, now you can say things like, hey, I would love it if, and I'm talking about in a somewhat healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I would love it. Let's say if there was more intimacy, let's say physical, let's go right for, it's so funny. I'm still talking like I'm on a PG podcast. If you want to have more sex, right. And you now realize that, okay, I have been immature in my ways that I have shown up before, that there has been manipulation, coercion, doing it, wanting validation through sex. But now if you realize, okay, I now understand that that is not a healthy way to show up in a relationship. But now I recognize that, hey, I've chosen myself that I know that this would be important to me. And now I'm choosing you. I really want to have more sex with you. So at that point, then when you really are in a healthy differentiated relationship, I'm almost back to, I have made that bid. And if that person says, that's not something I can offer you right now, then I have to respect that. Now if they say, but I don't want you to get mad at me, then I've had those situations now where I'm saying to the person, well, okay, yeah, that's fair. He can still be frustrated, but that's a him thing. And now he can deal with that frustration. But the fact that he was able to express that from this place of calm confidence, and now that, okay, that is something that he's interested in. Now you get a chance to deep dive and say, okay, what is it about the situation where I don't want to do that more? Because now I can explore, because it feels safe in the relationship.
Right.
Right.
That's right. Yes.
That,
And it can be,
that's
and I think that's right. Right. Now it's more neutral, but of course,
yes,
Tony, like the past isn't done. Right. And so,
exactly.
right. It's not, you can't be like, oh, I'm sorry that you can't put back together the smashed plate with your apology. Right. So then I think it becomes, in my mind, it like the healthy
Yeah.
response would be, what do I need to do to make you feel safer in that way?
And that's
How
it.
can I heal what I have done? I understand. I've said the words of apology. Now, what actions can I take
So good,
to
Kate.
heal this?
Yeah, because if
Right?
now that partner knows that, okay, this is fair, this is what I think this would be wonderful, and I'm choosing you, but I'm going to respect the fact that if you don't feel that way, I can
Mm-hmm.
that is fair. But now we get back to, okay, look at us. Now we get back
Yeah.
to that very beginning where now when you go back to the basis of healthy interdependence and the foundation for intimacy and stability in long-term relationships, intimacy. And I can't believe I haven't said this one already. The saying that just blew my mind, I use it as much as I can, is it takes great courage to know someone and it takes courage to be known. So at that point, then I want to sit with that discomfort of my own and then say, I want to know you. And then if you're saying, I don't feel safe, I don't feel comfortable and having, in a sexual relationship like you would like, but if I'm like, oh, I'm okay, but now I want to know you. So tell me why, because now we're going to get to some real vulnerability and real intimacy. And there's this concept where so often we think that we want intimacy in the relationship, but really we're just looking for validation. We just want the other person to tell us we're okay and that the things we think aren't crazy. And but real intimacy is I want to be known by my partner, and I really want to know my partner, and that will be uncomfortable. And then that growth comes from the discomfort of how to communicate through that, because it goes back to, because we are two completely different human beings that started out thinking we had to be on the same page with everything, codependent and meshed. But it turns out that's kind of silly, because we're two completely different human beings. So then we, of course, are going to have different experiences, thoughts, feelings, emotions. So then real intimacy is choosing to understand who this other person is and allowing them to know who I am. There's our intimacy.
That's right. And if we don't acknowledge that we are different people, we can't do that.
Mm-mm.
There's no curiosity left.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all. And that, see, this is ugly. We brought it home. I'm trying to think if there's any of other concepts around differentiation that have been just mind blowing. Well, I mean, one is that concept of that choosing. I really like this idea of, are you choosing yourself every day by then allowing yourself to think and feel the way you do, and self care, and do the things that really, what I call it, raising your emotional baseline. So that then you can choose this other person and know them fully, that you don't need them to make you feel better. You're choosing them because you feel good and you want to have a shared experience.
Because I want you. I want you along for this ride. I like, yeah, you as an individual are super cool and awesome, and I'm curious and fascinated by you, and I choose you.
Yeah. Are you talking much about your relationship on your podcast at all?
I am a little bit. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
just starting
because
to. I'm just starting to. Yeah.
I think I texted you at one point and said like that, and knowing now the concepts of differentiation is like, that's where I pick up that whole vibe from the seeing the pictures of you guys, of like, you're good. I know Kate is good. Kate likes Kate. And so then it's like, so you are choosing him, and because you have chosen you, and you pick, I
Yes.
mean, you see that the energy in
Yes.
that.
Oh
Is
my
that,
God. Yes. Thank you for saying that. Thank you
yeah,
for saying that. And it is so true. I don't want to like talk about relationships and then make it all about me, but it's so
you.
true.
Yeah.
It is. It's so true. Like I find him endlessly fascinating and he finds me endlessly fascinating. And we are so similar, and we, have similar pasts and lots of, overlap, and like we say the same words at the same time, and we like to do all the same things and all of that, but also differently. And it's so cool, and it's so exciting and fun. And yeah, it's delicious. And my heart, and
That's
it
good.
is that intimacy of like feeling like, oh my gosh, I am so cracked wide open,
Yeah.
after 8 years of just being like, nope,
Yeah.
just like cracked wide open, and also and willing to allow him to see me and be inside and
Yes.
like really get inside me in a way that I have never felt safe doing, because he is 100% open to,
Yeah.
right? And so it's an exchange. It's a true
Yeah.
exchange of energy that just like blows my mind. Blows my mind.
What I think I love the most about it, not trying to just give you a commercial to yourself, but the work that you're doing and the people that are in those relationships, and even when they get out of them, and so often I hear people say they never want to be in another relationship again,
Totally.
and right, and I think that part is the healing journey. That once you realize you're okay, then that it's now knowing what a unhealthy relationship looked like. And here's where I think it talks about, we're talking about polarity, where I know what the bad was, so actually now I will know what the good is.
That's right.
And
That's
are
right.
you experiencing that?
Absolutely. And I also think that for me, like I have done so much work around this. I mean, so
Mhm.
much therapy, so much, just so much work, all the, for many years. And so, yeah, I can recognize it and I can feel it. And more than that, Tony, I can receive it.
Oh gosh. Okay. That made me get the chills there. How hard has
Yeah.
that been, or has it been as hard?
I have had challenges.
Yeah.
I have had challenges of because I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
I have picked so poorly so many times that not only did I not trust men, right,
Yeah.
to a large degree, I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
And so there have been many times where I have had to have these conversations with myself, right?
Mhm.
The grounded responding, quiet mind,
Yeah.
calm heart, where I'm self-soothing in the shower, being like, is what I'm feeling really what I'm feeling, or is it what I want to feel? Am I, is this really like, and then just like quieting my mind,
Yeah.
calming my heart, self-soothing my anxiety, figuring it out for myself, and then having a grounded response with myself, like all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which is then allows me to sort of, get out of the shower and be like, hi,
Hi,
I
I'm
was
good.
just having this a thought and I wanted to share it with you, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what I end up doing is that I work through it in my own, like, I self-soothe my anxiety and then I can bring him. Holy shit, babe, let me tell you what I just went through in my head in the
Yes.
shower and where I got to. And then I'm letting him into this piece of myself
Yeah.
that's not like, here are all the broken, shattered pieces, but like, here's where I have been broken and here's where I'm learning and healing. And like, here you go, do with that what you will. And he's
Yeah.
like, wow, thank you for sharing that with me. And I love you even more for like bringing that to me and like all of that.
Yeah.
you
And
know,
what a difference from handing that over to the immature, the narcissistic person that says, thank you, I'll use those for later.
that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
also, what a difference between like, jumping out of the shower and being, yeah, but I don't know if you right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Now make me feel better about myself too. Like I need the validation, but you're
I'm
good.
bringing it to you because I need you to validate me. I need you to validate. I'm
Yeah.
scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I need you to validate me. I need you to validate. No, no, no. I'm scared. What's going on with me? Let me
Yeah.
figure that
Yeah.
out. Okay. I validated myself and now I can say, hey, I had this moment of like, fear. And here's what I realized. It's from this and from that. And actually I'm okay. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That is. Okay. That felt like fun. Okay. Can I do
Thank
one
you.
more speed round thing?
Yes.
So I do think it's interesting because the narcissist will take anything and then weaponize it. And
Yes.
so a lot of the times that I come up with tools, I try to figure out ways that the narcissist will weaponize. And this one, it's a pretty easy one. So when you learn that everything at the end of the day is a me thing, and ultimately that is empowering because I am in control of me things. But then you'll often hear the narcissistic person say, well, that's a you thing. Now, it's true that if something is a me thing, that does mean by definition, the other thing is the you thing. So then I think it's just fascinating though, if I'm aware that something's a me thing, then of course it makes sense that the other thing's a you thing. So what an opportunity for me to then be curious. Hey, tell me about your experience. But you so often hear people just say, throw out now, that's a you thing. Or
Uh-huh.
like with my beloved 4 pillars, pillar 1, assuming good intentions, where then the narcissistic person says, well, you're not assuming good intentions. So it's so fascinating how they'll take anything and then, oh, thank you for the new tool. And now I will use it against my partner. I appreciate that.
Yes.
So be
Right.
aware of that with the world of differentiation, because by definition, if it is a me thing, yes, that is a you thing. But if you are using that against another person, then that's a weaponizing the tool.
If I have this strong sense of self, if I am grounded and I have a solid and flexible sense of self, when someone says that sounds like a you thing, I know whether or not it is a me thing,
Yep, totally.
right? Then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
go, no, actually, that's not a me thing.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
really clear about
But tell
that.
me what's happening with you right now, because I'm,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
curious as to why you would think that was a me thing when it's
yeah.
clearly like you cheated and my reaction is a me thing. No.
Right, right. Well, you made me do it though. If you would have been better, then
Uh-huh.
so that is a you thing. No, it's
Yep.
not. No.
No, that's not a me thing. That is a you thing. Right. Exactly. Exactly. What's a me thing is what I'm going to do about that.
There you go.
Tony, I love and adore you. And we could literally
Same.
talk all day, but you
We
have a
could.
client now.
Yeah, I do.
Thank you so much. Tell everyone where they can find you. Most of my listeners already listen to you, but
Very kind. And I hear the same off of
who
me
they
too. So
are.
TonyOverbay.com or on Instagram at virtual.couch or at TikTok at virtual couch. Hey, one of these days, come on a live with me on Instagram or TikTok when we answer
Okay.
questions. You want to do that?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of fun. I will make sure we do that then.
Okay. Anytime, Tony. I love and adore you.
You too, Kate. Good to see you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.